Thanks for joining us for this Green Cleaners and Healthy Homes webinar. We're joined by Farah Fatimi from Oregon Metro, who's going to give their presentation. Just a little housekeeping to kick us off. You'll see at the bottom of your screen, you have a Q&A button and a chat button. If you have questions for Farah, you can pop them in the Q&A, and depending on the question, we'll either answer it live or you'll get a response in the Q&A box. And then the chat you can use, we'll be sharing some links to some of the things that Farah's talking about. And if you have any comments or want to share a story, the chat's a good place for that. Other housekeeping, so you'll notice that your video is off and you're muted. Please stay that way for the presentation. And then at the end, there'll be an option to raise your hand and we'll unmute you if you have questions that you want to ask. So I think that is it. Farah, you want to take it away?
Yeah, thanks, Kim. Well, thank you all for being here and taking time out of your day to join us. I am going to be talking about some tips and resources, and also just offering up myself as a resource for you to learn more about green cleaning and reducing toxic chemicals in the home. I am with Oregon Metro, and we are your regional government of the Portland, Oregon metropolitan area. We cover portions of 3 counties, Washington County, and as well as Clackamas and Multnomah. And with Oregon Metro, I'm with the Waste Prevention and Environmental Services Department. We do a lot of different things around garbage and recycling. And the program I work with specifically helps people identify ways that they can reduce toxic chemicals that may end up in the waste stream, in our garbage, our recycling, or even contaminating our waterways. So the program is really helping to reduce toxic chemicals in our waste, but there are lots of connections to human health and environmental health as well. And if you want to learn more about some of the other programs that we have at Oregon Metro, you can visit our website there. Today I'm going to highlight some of the common chemical ingredients that can be problematic for children's health and just health in general, but I'm talking a little bit about how children are particularly susceptible. I'll give some tips for safe cleaning as well as disinfecting at home, because the topic of disinfecting is really paramount right now during COVID. And then I will highlight how to choose products that are safe but work well in terms of reducing toxic chemicals, but still helping you clean really well. And one thing I want to highlight is that we do have the power to choose products that are safer for our families and ourselves, and for our homes. And really, when we go to the store, we're kind of exercising kind of like a vote of which companies we are supporting and which companies we're not. And the realm of, sort of toxic chemicals in products is a huge one, because there are many, many different chemicals on the market. But there are some simple ways to choose products that are safer, and that is what our program really focuses on. So today we're going to hone in on cleaners and disinfectants, but we also provide some resources around things like personal care products. So I encourage you to use some of our resources or reach out to us if you want to learn more about other types of products beyond cleaners that we talk about today. So what can happen when we are exposed to these toxic chemicals? And when we say toxics, those are really chemicals that can have adverse effects on your body, as well as the environment. So some of these chemicals can impact nervous system and brain function, your immune system, even sometimes the ways that your hormones are functioning in your body. They can also contribute to things like longer term risk for developing certain cancers and development and reproduction. Now this, I don't want to scare you with this slide. This doesn't mean that every exposure that happens is going to lead to any of these adverse impacts, but over the course of a lifetime, reducing the number of toxic chemicals that a person is exposed to can have beneficial effects, especially for long-term health outcomes. So that's what we kind of focus on is simple ways to eliminate the number of, reduce the number of toxic chemicals that you expose yourself or your family to. I do want to point out that children are particularly vulnerable when we're talking about toxic chemicals, and that is because, or in part because they are still developing, and some of the crucial processes in developing their immune and their reproductive systems are still happening. So it's a really key time for them in their development. Children are also, sort of getting into everything. They're putting things in their mouth, they're crawling all over surfaces, and there's just a lot that they're coming into contact with. So, making sure that you're using, for instance, a safe cleaner on your floor or your carpet is going to help with exposure for babies or kids that are playing a lot in those kinds of, in that kind of way. So what are some of the issues with conventional cleaners and disinfectants? And I'll go over kind of talking about the cleaning versus disinfecting thing in a minute. But really we're looking at a lot of these can pose health risks by emitting pollutants into the air of our home and leaving behind these residues on surfaces that can be toxic. And, releasing the chemicals in the home is kind of a key part of killing some of the germs, but it can also have, negative impacts on us. So I'm going to really highlight ways that you can choose less toxic or non-toxic products that won't leave behind as much issue for air quality or those toxic residues as much. Many of the chemicals can trigger things like asthma or contribute to things like skin irritation and sometimes even how your hormones function, as well as the other things that we talked about before. A good example of this is, asthma is one of the most common chronic illnesses for children in the US. And we have pretty good evidence that some cleaners and disinfectants aggravate asthma. So reducing the amount that we use those in our homes is can only have a good impact on children and their health outcomes. And a good example is bleach. Bleach is one of those kind of like, really, really commonly used chemicals, but we know that it is actually a asthmagen, meaning that it can trigger and aggravate asthma. So being really mindful about where you're using it and how you're using it in the house or looking for alternatives is a good thing. Another example are ammonium compounds in products such as Windex. Those have also been linked with skin irritation as well as asthma. And some of the ammonium compounds can accumulate in dust So if you're, again, talking about those children or pets crawling on the floor, they can actually end up ingesting some of those compounds. So looking for alternatives that are safer for this particular type is also important. So when we're talking about products that you use around the home, there are a few different things that you're going to be looking to do with your products. You're going to want to clean, and cleaning is really removing the dirt, grime, and germs. But this step doesn't necessarily kill germs, although it can reduce the risk of spreading germs or infections. Disinfecting is that step that is really working to destroy or inactivate bacteria and viruses, helping to reduce the risk of spreading infections. The goal here is a little bit different with the cleaning versus the disinfecting step. And it's really only when you disinfect that you're looking at killing a significant portion of the germs. Sanitizing is used a little bit interchangeably with disinfecting, and that also reduces the number of germs. But for something to be a disinfectant, it has to kill the vast majority of them. Usually, 99.9%. So sanitizing is maybe when you're using something that could be a disinfectant, but you're maybe not using it over the entire surface. So those are just some terms to help us understand what we're talking about when you're looking at products. So one of the things that we recommend is to look at cleaning first. So cleaning with soap is something that you can use as a really powerful first line of a defense. Soap is actually really cool in that it weakens the structure and components of both bacteria and viruses. So it doesn't actually kill them, but it helps to really basically render them inactive. And again, when we talked about cleaning, you're basically removing a lot of dirt, grime, and germs, right? And those are just going down the water of your sink or whatever. So using soap is a really non-toxic, awesome, powerful first line. And then when you're disinfecting, again, you're using something that is going to be killing germs. And I want to, suggest you focus on high touch areas. Those are areas that are touched a lot by children and adults, things like doorknobs, faucets, countertops, and if you're in public areas, drinking fountains. And when you're looking at disinfectants, look for safer active ingredients. So one of the ones that I mentioned before is bleach, right? But there are lots of alternatives to bleach that work really well and are much safer. This is a good list of safer alternatives: alcohol, hydrogen peroxide, L-lactic acid, and citric acid. And the great thing, alcohol, for instance, is basically evaporating off and not leaving behind a toxic residue. Hydrogen peroxide does kind of a similar thing. It breaks down and does not leave behind a toxic residue. The L-lactic acid and citric acid are natural compounds that are not nearly as toxic as some of the other disinfectants. So these are all good choices when you're looking at disinfecting those high touch surfaces. So what are some other ways to find healthier and safer cleaners and disinfectants? Well, one of the things you can do is really take a look at the label on the back of a product, and you will see an area where there is a rating there. This one says caution, and causes moderate eye irritation. And there is a range that you will see of three categories: caution, warning, and danger. And caution is the category that means that these compounds may be slightly toxic, but they're less toxic than, you know, the other categories. The figures on the right are really showing you how much somebody would have to drink and actually ingest before it would send them to the emergency room, generally in those toxicity categories. So with caution, a product that's in that category, somebody could drink maybe an ounce or more before sending them to the emergency room. And then you get less and less as you go up to danger. You know, it's less than a teaspoon. So that also, you know, translates to when you're using those products and spraying them in your home, you're going to be impacting your air quality less, and chemicals are going to be settling in your dust that are less toxic if you're using products in the caution category versus the others. So that's one thing. The other thing to think about is there are generally, when we're talking about cleaning in the home, there are three types of cleaners that can be more toxic than others. And those tend to be oven cleaners, drain cleaners, and toilet cleaners. So if there are ways that you can minimize the amount that you're using these, or even eliminating these conventional products, that's a great step. So with oven cleaners, you can take steps to, you know, even just using some aluminum foil to keep the area that you're, you know, experiencing drippage in your oven is a step that would allow you to use less chemicals. For drain cleaners, I use these drain catchers that catch a lot of hair and other items. And that means that a lot less is going down the drain that would eventually result in a clog. So you oftentimes using those hair catchers, especially in the bathroom, will make it so that you get your drains clogged a lot less. Toilet cleaners are also another category. With those, there are lots of you know, non-toxic alternatives. Even just using some of the basic spray cleaners. I'll show you a recipe that is basically just vinegar, a little bit of water, and soap that would work well. You can also just use baking soda in the toilet, and those are really good at getting your toilets clean. All right. Let's see. Another tip that I have is to choose unscented products. So when these chemicals are made, when these products are made, the chemicals that contribute to the scents as well as make the scents linger and sort of be strong are chemicals that have been linked to hormonal disruption and you know, potentially linked to developmental disorders as well. So that's not to say that, you know, exposure to a fragranced product is going to result in, you know, really, really adverse health impacts. But again, every little bit that you can cut out can make a difference. So choosing unscented products is a good step. When you're looking for products, antibacterial is not necessarily something that we recommend, because it turns out that regular soaps that are not antibacterial are oftentimes just as effective. And these antibacterial soaps are oftentimes made with problematic chemicals such as triclosan, which can cause skin irritation. I'm particularly sensitive to some of the really harsh soaps, and if I'm traveling and using public restrooms a lot, I start to get eczema on my hands And that could be a sensitivity to a chemical such as triclosan or another antibacterial compound. Some other tips for safe cleaning and disinfecting, especially if you're using harsher chemicals, are just being mindful and opening the windows and running exhaust fans, as well as keeping children and pets away when you're using products. So just keeping really good ventilation, as well as protecting yourself. So because I have issues with eczema, if I am using any harsh chemicals or antibacterial soaps, using gloves can really help. And then kind of the last one seems really straightforward, but just thinking about how much product you're using and being mindful of that. It's easy to use a lot of product and think we're getting the job done really well, but sometimes you only need a certain amount to actually clean or disinfect very well. So I'm going to highlight some ways that you can make some simple green cleaning recipes and talk about green cleaning as a great alternative to some of the conventional cleaners that we talked about and some of the drawbacks to them. But I did just want to stop and see if there are any questions about some of the stuff that I shared so far.
Hey, Farah, no, we don't have any questions so far about the beginning of this presentation, but if anybody wants to just drop your questions in the chat as we go along, there'll be more opportunities for us to kind of get to those questions later on.
Okay, great. So with green cleaning, we're really looking at recipes and ingredients that are non-toxic. So things like vinegar, baking soda, hydrogen peroxide can all be substituted for some of the conventional chemicals. And honestly, a lot of these ingredients are just as effective. Sometimes you just have to put a little bit more elbow grease into your cleaning. But I use almost exclusively all of the stuff for my cleaning. And I can feel, like I'm not unnecessarily exposing myself to anything while I'm cleaning. So I'll highlight two different recipes that are really simple to make and also really effective. One's an all-purpose vinegar spray, and one is a soft scrub with anything that has some grime or dirt kind of baked in. So the vinegar spray is really simple. All you need is an empty spray bottle, and make sure that's something that's clean, has been washed out well if it's used for other things. That's basically 3 parts water, 1 part vinegar, and a little bit of vegetable-based soap. We do recommend vegetable-based soaps as opposed to petroleum-based soaps. And you can usually find that on the label somewhere. It will say vegetable oil-based, or it will be in the ingredients what vegetable oils were used. The other one is, so the all-purpose vinegar spray is good for countertops, even your kitchen sink, some of the tiles if you have in your kitchen or your bathroom. Vinegar is a really nice antifungal, so it will help with the growth of mold and mildew in the shower as well. The second one is a soft scrub, and that is really great for things like your bathroom sink or your bathroom bathtub. And when you get the scum and kind of grime on there that is caking on there, the baking soda is a really nice but gentle abrasive, and that'll work really well at getting off some of that grime. With both of these, you can add some essential oils or even some lemon or lime if you want it to smell a little bit fresher. Oh, I see there might be. Oh, awesome. So other folks are using the vinegar spray as well. Cool. Well, I'll route you to some resources where you can find more recipes than just these two. There are a lot on our website, and the website is listed in the chat. I do want to highlight, if you have chemicals in your home, I have some tips for safe storage and disposal. So especially with things like bleach and those ammonium compounds and other chemicals that might be toxic, make sure you're locking up your products so that children and pets can't get to them. Even getting rid of the products that you don't use often can be good, because oftentimes those products can be off-gassing while they're sitting in your cabinet. But make sure not to throw them down the drain, and call us, and we'll give you our number to determine where you should take those chemicals or how you should dispose of them safely. So that number is listed here, and yeah, thank you. You put it in the chat as well. You can call us at this hotline to see how you can dispose of your containers. And Metro staff are basically on the phone lines Monday through Friday, I think it is now. We used to be open on Saturdays. And that is 8:30 to 5. So this is an example of a container that you might have some questions about. And I'll just go through a few examples of these. So this is a Lysol disinfectant spray. You can recycle that if the container is empty, but you do need to treat it as hazardous waste if the product has anything left in it. And that is because it's a highly pressurized container, and those chemicals could react with other chemicals that are in the garbage, creating, sometimes fires are started that way when two chemicals come into contact that shouldn't. This is a bottle of bleach that can also be recycled if the container is empty, but should be treated as hazardous waste as well if there's anything in there. This is a Windex bottle. Again, it can be recycled if it's empty, but hazardous waste if there's any product left in there. So if you take these to one of our facilities, keeping it in its original container and knowing exactly what it is really useful. So you can just keep it in the container like that. But again, these particular examples should not be thrown down the drain. You can find more information about what is considered hazardous waste and what can be disposed of safely and how on our Healthy Homes website. So the link is there, and it's also in the chat as well. On the Healthy Homes website, you can also find tons and tons of green cleaning recipes. So it's a really great, amazing resource. We also have a booklet that our folks at Washington County, our colleagues, are oftentimes giving out at community events. So keep an eye out for those as well. Another good resource are some phone apps that have been developed over the past few years. One is called Think Dirty, Shop Clean, and that allows you to search for different products or scan different products at the store. And it will give you a rating of basically 1 to 10, 1 being the least toxic and 10 being the most toxic or problematic. That's a really great resource. Think Dirty has a big database for personal care products and less for green cleaners. But the one right next to it, pictured here, is called Healthy Living. And that actually has a pretty decent database for cleaners and disinfectants. So you can do the same thing where you type in the product or scan the product when you're at the store. The Environmental Working Group also has an amazing guide to healthy cleaning online. So you can search for different products. You can find out more about the ingredients in them and what might be problematic, as well as find recommendations for better alternatives. So that's a really great resource as well. And one of the other things I just want to point out is that, you know, you can consider kind of a different framework when you're at the store and thinking about buying cleaners and disinfectants. So, you know, one, thinking about, do you need that product in the first place? Is there a different way to get that job done? But also, is there a safer alternative that you can find? So like swapping out bleach for hydrogen peroxide, right? Or hydrogen peroxide for bleach, if you know what I mean. And even looking at, you know, can you make that safer alternative? So instead of buying something like Ajax, looking at a product or making your own product like the soft scrub, which is really great for, you know, sort of the same types of activities. And with that, I will really suggest that, you know, we have lots of good resources on our website, but we've also got lots of really knowledgeable experts that you can call at that number. You can also navigate to the website that is listed here and is also in the chat. And basically you can put information in to ask a question about green cleaning or any other question about toxic chemicals or hazardous waste, and somebody will get back to you from our staff. And usually if it's a question about cleaning and, you know, non-toxic products for the home, that would probably be me. So yeah, I just want to emphasize that we're here to help, and please, you know, reach out to us with questions or you know, assistance looking for other resources. And that's all I have for you today. So I would welcome questions, and even if folks want to share some stories, if they have green cleaning tips that they want to share with other people here, we would love to hear your stories.
Yeah, so we actually do have a couple questions. They're related. So the first one is, you know, let's say you already have all these chemicals in your home and you're cleaning them out. What's the, you know, what are some safe ways to do that now, since we don't have some of these collection events happening? What are our options?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I would encourage you to, you know, if you can kind of organize the chemicals by, you know, the type that you have. So I would keep your automotive chemicals maybe away from your cleaning chemicals and make sure that all the lids are on. And if you can put them in kind of like different containers, plastic bins are kind of the best to keep them away from each other, but even just putting them in separate bags is helpful. And then calling our number is really the best way to find the closest area for you to, or place for you to take your chemicals into. So that 503-234-3000 number is really the best, best number to call. We will be resuming a limited number of collection events, including some in Washington County, likely in the late summer or fall. So when you call that number and you tell them where you live, if there are any events coming up, they would be able to tell you then. And then we do have a couple facilities where you can bring your chemicals. Those tend to be far for some folks in Washington County, but they will definitely point you to where you can take them.
Is there, so that actually answers question number 2 as well, the collection events. I did have a thought, question of my own, which was, how do you prioritize the chemicals that you might actually consider donating to like a Habitat for Humanity. You know, some of these things are useful. And then there's some things that are just something you wouldn't want to, you know, have someone else maybe use or open up or, you know, try to use it in their own home. How do you prioritize that with the donation versus disposal, proper disposal?
Yeah, that's really a question for one of our hazardous waste technicians. They know a lot more about that process than I do. But typically, if the bottles are really well labeled and easily identified, and that's why I was saying, you know, keep your chemicals in the container that you got them in, because when you bring them in, then we know what it is, and they can be routed to reuse streams if that's appropriate. And usually we're looking to reuse items that are oftentimes less toxic, so they're not going to put anybody in as much danger if they're accidentally exposed while they're being rerouted. And so it tends to be things like, you know, like the Windex that the Windex bottle, right? Some cleaners like in that category, as well as things like fertilizers, right? Those tend to be some of the types of things that are most easily routed for reuse versus like a really caustic chemical that you're using for paint stripping or something like that.
Brake cleaner or something like that.
Yeah.
Okay, it's good tips. And that's the last of our questions that I have in the Q&A here.
Great. Well, I can stay on for a minute or two more just to see if any more questions come in, but I really appreciate you all being here, and I encourage you to use some of the tools that I mentioned and reach out to us with any more questions or you know, help you need, pointing you in the right direction for resources.
All right, thank you so much, Farah. That was awesome. And thank you for everyone who showed up and who had some great questions. I wonder if I could steal the screen for just a second and share just a few announcements from our side.
Yes, hold on.
Is there another question? Oh, how
Yep.
about while oh, sorry, go ahead, Heather, while I take
Oh, no, I
over
was
the
just
screen
gonna,
here.
yes, find a good place to break in here. And yeah, we have another question. Any suggestions on a good reusable spray bottle? The ones I've bought always break down pretty fast.
That's a good question. While Kim is talking, I can put what we've been buying down in the chat. But I honestly haven't used them for more than a year or two, so I don't know how long they last, but they seem to be holding up pretty well. So I'll try to find a link to the bottles we've been buying and put that in there.
Great, thanks.
That's a really good question. And also, I'll just throw in to make sure that that's one of the things that maybe you don't want to reuse other bottles for, because if there's a little chemical residue left from like another cleaning agent or something and you put more stuff in there, you might have a reaction that you don't want. So it's good if you're making your own cleaners to like start with a nice, fresh, clean bottle. Just a few quick announcements from us at Solid Waste and Recycling. If you're playing, so every day is Earth Day. Even though we're coming to the end of April and Earth Month, we still have some more fun activities coming up. If you're not playing yet, we have our Earth Week and Beyond Challenge, which is an app-based scavenger hunt. It's on a platform called Goose Chase. So you go to Google Play or the App Store and download Goose Chase. It's free. Search for Washco Earth Week, and there's lots of fun missions, and you can earn points and win prizes until May 22nd. So it's running for a couple more weeks. This webinar is worth 25 points. So if you haven't started playing yet, you get a free 25 points just to kick off, which is great. Next are Lattes and Learns, which is another online activity that we've been offering through our green business team. Oops. Oh, sorry. There we go. So the lattes and learns are from our green business team, but anyone's welcome to attend. The next one is Tuesday, May 4th at 8:30 a.m. And the guest is going to be the West Side Transportation Alliance. And then finally, the Earth Month webinar. So this was the last week, but you can check out the slides and the recordings for Recycling 101, Beyond the Bin, Eat Smart, Waste Less, which were the last couple of weeks. And we'll have this presentation with the slides and the recordings up in a couple days, and we'll be sending out a follow-up email with those links and with some more resources. So thank you all so much, and I'm going to turn it back over to Farah.
All right, yeah, thank you all for coming today, and please let us know if you have any more questions. But it was a pleasure to be with you today, and we hope we can help you with any more of your questions in the future.
All right. Thanks again, Farah. Thanks, everyone. Have a good evening. Bye.
Thanks.